He stood at the altar in a tailored black suit. His jaw clenched. His eyes didn't smile. She walked toward him, wearing a plain cream dress. No designer label, no sparkle, just grace and quiet steps. The guests, mostly silent, but their eyes, judging. A whisper floated through the crowd. She doesn't belong here. The billionaire didn't blink, and the bride never let go of his hand. That day, the city laughed at him, but it had no idea what was coming. Have you ever made a decision so quiet, so personal? The world mistook it for weakness. Have you ever been mocked for choosing peace instead of power? For choosing someone not because of what they wear or own, but because of how they make you breathe easier? If yes, then this story is for you. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where we don't just tell stories, we tell truths. Here, we share real-life inspired American stories that stir your heart, challenge your choices, and remind you of life's most important lesson. Love doesn't always arrive in diamonds and headlines. Sometimes it shows up in silence and stays. Today's story is about Cairo Veldon, a billionaire the city couldn't stop talking about, and Amira Dane, the woman they thought was too ordinary to be his bride. But what the city mocked became the one thing that saved him. Stay with us, because what starts as a contract will slowly become the kind of love that doesn't need proving. This isn't a story about romance in champagne suites or designer gowns. This is about two people who made peace louder than the noise around them. And if that already moved something in you, hit the like button, tap subscribe, and leave a comment if you believe that sometimes the quietest woman changes the loudest man. Let's begin. He never wanted the noise, only the peace that came after it. But peace never came. Not in a city like this. Not for someone like him. Cairo Veldon didn't wear arrogance. He wore precision. Black tailored suits, silver tie clips, minimalist watches, and quiet dominance in every room he walked into. By 35, his name was stamped on smart home devices, privacy software, and cloud security platforms across 3 continents. His companies hired thousands. His photo was framed on tech magazines and whispered about in venture capital dinners. To the world, he was the golden brain with a jawline built for headlines. But power came at a cost. He didn't trust easily. He didn't share. And when he did, it was brief, cold, and regretted immediately after. He kept everything and everyone compartmentalized. Business in one drawer, dating in another, family in the furthest one he barely opened. And love? That drawer stayed locked. Success doesn't mean anything if you go home to silence. His mother told him that during a quiet breakfast in the home he bought her in Highland Park. She wasn't the emotional kind either, but she always saw straight through his armor. Have dinner with the Danes, she added. Their daughter isn't flashy. But she sees people. Cairo blinked slowly. You're suggesting I marry someone to balance me out? No, she said, folding her napkin. I'm suggesting you stop choosing women who expect your world to orbit theirs. You need someone who doesn't ask for your crown, just wants your attention. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The next day, his assistant scheduled the meeting. Before Amira Dane walked into the room, Cairo knew her resume. Age, 31, education, pediatric care, later certified in holistic trauma therapy business, founder of a mid-sized retreat in the suburbs family, upper middle-class parents, known for charitable work. She had no scandals, no luxury car, no tabloid history, no moments captured on paparazzi reels. To his world, she was invisible, and that was intriguing. The room wasn't romantic. It was sterile, neutral tones. Glass table, 2 cups of coffee, no music, no candles. She walked in wearing beige linen pants and a muted green blouse. No makeup, except soft lip gloss. No heels, just presence. Cairo didn't stand. He didn't know why that made her smile. You're Cairo Veldon, she said, sitting across from him. You're Amira Dane. Silence. She tilted her head slightly. You thought I'd be impressed by your empire. He leaned back. Most are. Then you don't meet enough people. That was the first moment he looked directly at her. Not as a formality, but with interest. They didn't talk about hobbies or favorites. She asked, "Why are you here?" He replied, "My mother thinks I need grounding." Amira raised an eyebrow. "And you agreed? I've built everything else. Might as well build a marriage. That's not love. I'm not looking for love." "Then, what are you looking for?" He paused, looked down at his untouched espresso, then at her again. Loyalty, peace, maybe a home that doesn't echo. She didn't move. "Then, that's not enough for me." And, as he expected her to leave, she leaned forward. "But if you're willing to learn what love feels like, I might stay." The conversation lasted 2 hours. No flirting, no small talk, no grand gestures. But when she stood to leave, he said, "Amira, why did you come?" She turned at the doorway. "Curiosity. And what did you find?" She held his gaze. A man who can't rest, not even in his own skin. He didn't respond. But that night he lay awake longer than usual, hearing her voice echo in the quiet room. Cairo didn't waste time. 3 days after their meeting, his legal team drafted the initial agreement. No press coverage, no public statements, no financial entanglements. A marriage with clean terms and quiet boundaries. Amira read it in silence. "You treat marriage like a merger," she said softly. He looked up from his screen. "I'm offering clarity." She nodded. "Then let me be clear too. I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to be a brand partner. And I don't care what the headlines say. If this is going to happen, I need one thing." He waited. "Presence," she said. "Don't give me what money can buy. Give me what no one else gets." He didn't speak for a long time. Then, deal. The city found out anyway. Even though they kept the engagement private, a leak slipped into a gossip column. Tech tycoon to marry wellness woman. The blogs ran wild. "She's plain. She's not even from the industry. Must be a business strategy. She's good PR. Watch her disappear in 6 months." Cairo didn't comment. Amira didn't flinch. She continued hosting her morning meditation sessions, running workshops, checking in on her patients. While the city laughed, she moved in silence. And maybe that was why it bothered them so much. It was small, 30 people, mostly family, no press, no stage lighting, no grand entrance. She wore an off-white slip dress with simple straps. No veil, no makeup artist, no stylist. Cairo wore black, crisp, sharp, minimal. When she walked in, he didn't smile. But his hand reached for hers, naturally, without planning. The officiant spoke. They exchanged a few vows. No one cried. No one clapped too loud. But when Amira slid the ring on his finger, she looked up and whispered, "Don't disappear." He blinked once. That was all. They returned to the city by car. He worked on his tablet during the drive. She looked out the window, calm but unreadable. At the penthouse, he unlocked the door. She stepped in first, barefoot, setting her bag down. "I'll take the guest room tonight," she said. He nodded. "If you change your mind, it's your home too." She looked at him. "You don't have to make space. You have to make room." Then walked away. He stood there for a while, not sure why her words stayed long after she was gone from the room. They woke up the next morning under the same roof, but in different rhythms. He went to work. She returned to her retreat. He attended board meetings. She sat with grieving mothers and anxious teens. They didn't text during the day. They didn't eat together every night. But when they did share a room, it wasn't awkward, it was still. And stillness was new to him. She didn't ask questions he didn't want to answer. She didn't search his phone. She didn't post photos. She asked about sleep, about silence, about what made him feel safe. And that made him pause more than once. There were no loud arguments, no slammed doors, but there were moments when she'd speak, and he'd nod without listening. Moments where he'd talk business at dinner, and she'd quietly finish her meal without interrupting. She didn't try to be a wife by his standards. She stayed herself. And that made him question what those standards even were. One night, Cairo came home late. He was exhausted. His jacket was slung over his shoulder. He hadn't eaten. He found her asleep on the couch, book resting on her stomach. A warm herbal tea, untouched, on the table beside her. He paused, watched her chest rise and fall. Quiet, steady, safe. He didn't know when he sat beside her. Didn't realize he touched her ankle lightly. Didn't expect himself to whisper, "You're the only place I rest." She opened her eyes slowly. Didn't speak. She reached for his face and touched it like he wasn't fire, like he wouldn't burn her. He closed his eyes, and for once, let the quiet hold him. The city never needed facts. Whispers were enough. It started with a single photo. Cairo walking beside Amira down a narrow sidewalk in the West Loop district. He wore a navy wool coat, phone in one hand. She wore a grey knit sweater dress and low sandals, her fingers lightly hooked around his elbow. No security detail, no assistants, no entourage. Just two people and the wind. The photo hit social media before they even got home. Within an hour, the caption read, "The billionaire's bride looks more like a no-name nanny than a CEO's wife." The city was watching and judging. Podcasts mocked the pairing. She doesn't match the brand. He built tech. She teaches breathing. Who lets their mother arrange their marriage in 2025? One influencer joked, "He's clearly exhausted. Maybe she's just there to lower his cortisol." At first, Cairo didn't care. He wasn't on social media. His assistant filtered most mentions. He kept his focus on a pending merger deal with a cybersecurity startup in Boston. But Amira wasn't blind. The gossip made it to her retreat. Clients brought it up half-jokingly. "So how's it feel being married to a billionaire? You meditate the money into existence. You look so normal. Good for you. I bet you're secretly a genius in disguise. Or are you just really, really peaceful?" She smiled politely, deflected, focused on their breathing, their posture, their healing. But she went home that night and washed her face slower. Sat on the edge of their bed for longer, not because she was hurt, because she was wondering if he noticed, if he even heard what they said about her. Later that week, a photo of Cairo appeared at an investor summit in Manhattan. He was sharp, stoic, flanked by advisors and founders. Amira wasn't there. The caption read, "Alone again. Veldon makes public appearance without his bride. Trouble already?" She saw it while reheating lunch at home. She said nothing. Not then. But that night, she set the table for two, just in case. Lit a single candle. Put down cloth napkins. He came in at 9:13 p.m. "Eat with me?" she asked, quietly. He hesitated at the doorway. His shoulders were tense. He looked at his phone, sighed, then nodded. 10 minutes. I've got a West Coast call after. He took off his jacket and sat. She ladled soup into his bowl without comment. He sipped slowly, checking something on his screen every few minutes. She didn't look frustrated. She didn't demand more. She just said, "Once, if you want this to work, you have to be in it." He didn't respond. He simply set down the spoon and reached for his glass of water. When dinner ended, she took the plates and began to rinse them. Cairo stood behind her for a second too long. She waited, but he said nothing, and she didn't turn around. The next morning, she didn't go into the retreat. Instead, she stayed in their penthouse, rearranged the guest library space, her quiet corner. She added new touches, a folded grey throw over the armchair, a stack of handwritten journals she used to reflect after sessions, a diffuser, a teacup, a candle that smelled like jasmine. On the low shelf by the stair rail, she set a photo frame. A candid one from a quiet day trip they'd taken a month ago to Lake Geneva. The two of them on a wooden bench, sun in their faces, wearing no watches, no tension. He was laughing at something she had said. His laugh, real, teeth showing. She had one foot up on the bench, her body leaning slightly into his, but not holding him. That photo was untouched by headlines. She didn't tell him she put it there. That evening, as he walked down the stairs in his usual rush, Something caught his eye. He stopped, looked, and stood there. Not because of the photo itself, but because he didn't remember anyone taking it. He didn't even realize that was how he looked beside her. He didn't say anything that night either. But he didn't go back to the office. He took his laptop into the living room and sat across from her as she read. No words, but she noticed. By Saturday, the city was louder. Some media voices tried to spin it positively. She's humble. She balances him. She's the mystery nobody expected. But others kept the noise sharp. She's a placeholder. She brings no value. She's not one of us. Still, she didn't shrink. She wore the same loose cardigans. She carried a woven tote. She never posted online. She didn't comment, tweet, or share. Her Instagram stayed untouched. Her phone stayed off in sessions. She continued her work with veterans and survivors. She taught breathwork to teens, spoke at small school events, volunteered at trauma groups. And she came home every evening, set the table, never knowing if he'd sit, but always leaving a place for him. The judgment didn't stop. It sharpened. A popular morning show brought in a relationship analyst who called their marriage imbalanced. Another podcast joked that Amira was the calm before his next scandal. A fashion blogger mocked her clothes. A tech commentator questioned her qualifications to stand beside someone like him. And while Cairo didn't follow any of it, the city's voice still found its way in small fragments. A clip here, a headline there, a whisper over lunch at a restaurant, a comment from a board member who thought he was being harmless. She's a sweet woman, Cairo. But you know she doesn't fit. He didn't answer. He didn't defend her either. He simply kept scrolling through performance reports, but something in his jawline tightened. A week after the summit photo, Cairo invited 10 executives to a private dining room atop a rooftop hotel. He didn't ask Amira to come. She didn't ask if she was supposed to. Instead, she said, "Have a productive dinner," and kissed his cheek before he left. It was light, soft, but he felt it linger longer than usual. At the dinner, attendees made jokes at her expense, little jabs, light digs, side comments about her simple life, her retreat, her background, her quiet ways. Someone said, "She looks like she still shops at street markets." Another added, "Maybe she's good for grounding, you know? Think of her as a hobby." Cairo didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He didn't respond. But when the table erupted in laughter, he tapped his fork twice. A quiet sound, enough for the people nearest him to stop. The rest followed. He didn't defend her. Not with words. But silence can be a form of defense when delivered in the right tone. Still, when he got home later that night, he found Amira asleep on the couch again, head tilted to the side, a blanket across her legs. He stood there for a long moment before lifting the blanket higher. Then he turned off the lamp beside her and went upstairs alone. The next morning, Amira went back to her retreat. She arrived early, unlocking the doors, setting out cushions, boiling water for tea, and lighting a gentle eucalyptus blend her clients liked. Her assistant, Gina, handled check-ins. A mother arrived with a child who refused to speak after witnessing a traumatic event. A man recovering from a panic disorder attended her grounding session. 2 young women newly navigating life after heartbreak took her afternoon class. Every person who stepped into her retreat carried something heavy, and she made it lighter. In that space, surrounded by people seeking peace, she didn't think about gossip headlines or podcasts. She didn't think about what the city had decided she was. Her life had meaning before she met Cairo. She wasn't about to let the city unteach her that. That evening, Amira cooked, nothing extravagant. Sautéed vegetables, warm rice, a mild curry, a small plate of fruit. She didn't know if he'd come home. He'd been getting busier. He was always busy, but she still cooked. She still set 2 plates. She still placed cutlery gently, aligning everything like she wanted peace to live on their table, even if it didn't live in their schedules yet. He walked in at 7:52 p.m. She looked up. "You're early. Meeting ended sooner than expected," he said, loosening his tie. "Sit," she said, and he did. They ate without words for the first few minutes. Then Amira spoke. Her tone wasn't sharp, it was simple, soft. You don't have to explain yourself to the world, but don't let them shape you. He paused mid-bite, meaning, they talk about us like they know you, like they know me. He looked at her, uncertain. You're bothered. I'm aware, she corrected. Bothered is when you let it sit in your chest. Aware means I see it without letting it live inside me. He blinked. She had a way of speaking that sounded effortless, but carried depth. You're handling it better than I expected, he said. She smiled faintly. You have low expectations. He didn't deny it. She set down her fork. I don't need you to fight them. I don't need you to defend me in public. All I need is for you not to agree with them in silence. This time, he swallowed slower. I don't, he said. I know, she answered. But the world thinks your silence is agreement, and you give them a lot of silence. He wanted to say he wasn't used to defending anyone. He wanted to say he didn't know how. He wanted to say he feared if he spoke too soon, too strongly, he would reveal how much she was beginning to mean to him. But he said none of that. Instead, he focused on the plate, finished his food, and thanked her quietly before going upstairs. The next morning, a new headline floated across every gossip site. Why isn't Amira at any events? Trouble brewing in the quiet marriage. A video showed a panelist laughing. Maybe he hides her because he's embarrassed. She doesn't match his lifestyle. The clip spread fast. When Amira's assistant showed it to her, she simply smiled and said, "Delete it." But at home that night, she moved slower. Cairo noticed. "You're tired," he said. "Not tired," she replied. "Just aware, as always." And he saw it, the way her shoulders carried weight she didn't voice. For the first time since the wedding, guilt brushed him. Later that night, she made tea in the kitchen. He walked in looking drained, sleeves rolled up, tie gone. She poured 2 cups. He raised a brow. "I didn't ask for tea." "You didn't need to," she said, and handed him the cup. He took it. He didn't drink it yet. She leaned on the counter across from him. "One day, you'll learn that presence is louder than defense." He exhaled slowly. He didn't know how to be someone's presence. Not yet. But he stayed in the kitchen with her that night. And it was a start. The next morning, as he walked down the stairs, he saw the framed lake photo again. The sunlight, her leaning into him, his unguarded smile, rare, almost unfamiliar. He stopped, touched the frame lightly. Her voice floated from the kitchen. "Breakfast is ready." He didn't move. He didn't answer. He stared at the photo for a long moment. Something inside him bent, not violently but quietly, the way ice softens at the first hint of spring. Have you ever felt judged for choosing peace over performance? For loving someone the world didn't understand? If you believe real love isn't always loud, but steady, drop a comment below. Tap like, and hit subscribe to join a community that values love that lasts, not love that trends. Because here on Mr. Charles Stories, we tell stories that remind you. The quiet ones, they often love the deepest. He didn't realize how quiet the house had become until she stopped filling it. Amira still spoke, still moved through rooms with grace. But there was less of her. Fewer questions, less warmth in her tone when he walked in, less softness in her eyes when she looked at him. She hadn't turned cold. She'd just stopped trying to carry the silence for both of them. That morning, he watched her from the stairs as she tied her scarf by the door. She wore soft cream pants and a long olive-green cardigan. She didn't rush. She never did. Cairo stood there, hand resting on the railing, saying nothing. She didn't look back before leaving. The sound of the door closing felt sharper than usual. The city was still circling. His company had recovered from the data leak accusations, but headlines still chased his name. A former assistant did a tell-all interview. A rival CEO implied he was too distracted by his personal life to be trusted with bigger acquisitions. They never mentioned Amira directly, but they didn't have to. Cairo knew the tone, the way they framed things, the way they left her out. That night, Cairo walked into the kitchen and found her already there, preparing ginger tea. She didn't start a conversation. He leaned against the counter. "Do you ever feel like I'm still somewhere else?" She didn't answer right away. Then, not always, but often, that sat heavy in the air. "I'm trying," he said. "I know," she replied. She didn't turn. He stepped closer. "You don't ask for much." She faced him now. "I ask for the one thing that costs you the most." "What's that?" "Your attention." He looked down at her hands. They were steady, calm. His weren't. "I don't always know how to give it." Amira nodded. "Then learn. Like everything else you've mastered." The next morning, he cancelled a press lunch. He drove her to the retreat instead. Didn't say why, didn't explain, just walked her to the front door, waited while she unlocked it, and said before she went in, "I'll be here when you're done." She blinked. "You don't have to." "I know," he said, but he didn't drive off. He sat in the car, silence around him, and waited. It was a small thing, him waiting outside, but Amira noticed it. Between client sessions, she glanced out the window. His car was still there, same spot, engine off, no driver, no one else, just him, sitting in silence, waiting. She made no call, no message, said nothing about it. But when she walked out 3 hours later, her expression softened the moment their eyes met. He stepped out first. "I thought you had calls." "I moved them." She didn't ask what that meant. She just nodded and got in. No one spoke during the drive, but the silence wasn't distant anymore. It felt like presence. That evening, she took off her cardigan and handed it to him as she stepped into the kitchen. He folded it without thinking and placed it over the couch. He didn't reach for his phone, didn't pull out his laptop. He followed her movements, watched her rinse rice, chop vegetables. Then he quietly began helping. No words exchanged, just hands moving together, rhythm shared. When dinner was ready, she paused before sitting. He looked up. "What?" "I wasn't sure when I'd feel this again." He didn't pretend to misunderstand. "I wasn't sure I'd be able to give it." After they ate, he poured her tea. She held the cup with both hands and said, "I think you're scared of needing anyone." He sat across from her. "That's not untrue. Needing me doesn't make you weak." He nodded. "It makes me unsure." Amira leaned forward. "Then be unsure. But be here. I'll meet you in that space." For the first time since their wedding, Cairo reached for her hand, without hesitation, without pretense. And she let him hold it until both cups were empty. Later that night, as she slept, Cairo stayed awake beside her. Not because he was anxious, but because for once, he wasn't trying to escape his own home. He looked at her breathing steady, her face soft. And for the first time, he wondered if the city's opinions ever mattered at all. Cairo didn't understand the pull at first. He thought he was just being considerate, showing up, being seen. But as the days went on, he found himself returning to the retreat more often. Sometimes he parked and stayed in the car. Sometimes he walked inside, sat in the waiting area, drank the tea they left out for clients. He didn't speak. He didn't take calls. He didn't even use his laptop. He watched her move through the halls, watched her kneel beside a teenage boy in the quiet room, watched her hold an elderly woman's hand during a grief session, watched her smile, not for him, not for anyone in particular, just because it was in her to smile. In that space, Amira wasn't his wife. She wasn't the quiet woman on his arm. She was her own force. And for the first time, Cairo wasn't trying to control or edit that. He was learning from it. That evening, they sat on the floor of their shared living room. No wine, no music, just a blanket, the city lights outside, and 2 bowls of soup between them. He glanced at her. "You're different in that place." She looked at him. "I'm the same. You're just now seeing it." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes, I think I married a stranger," he admitted. She didn't take offense. "You did, but so did I." He exhaled. "I thought I could keep things separate. Business, marriage, myself. But you blurred it all. You needed blurring, she said gently. You built walls. I built rooms. He turned to her. Then help me move in. She didn't answer with words. She leaned her head on his shoulder. And that was enough for now. He started showing up without warning. No driver, no assistant, no security. Some mornings Cairo brought coffee. Other days, he just walked her to the door. A few times, he stayed until the sessions ended and helped clean up the space without being asked. Amira didn't question it. She didn't praise him for doing it either. That's what made him stay. It wasn't performance. It was presence. One Thursday afternoon, he sat in the retreat's garden while Amira wrapped up a trauma counseling session. Her assistant came outside to bring him water. You know, Gina said carefully, most men in your position wouldn't bother. Cairo looked up. Most men in my position live exhausted. She smiled faintly. And you? He didn't answer. But his eyes followed Amira the moment she stepped through the back doors. Later that night, as they folded laundry together, Amira asked quietly, when do you rest? He shrugged, in between meetings. On long flights. She gave him a look. That's not rest, that's waiting. He didn't argue. Instead, he said, I rested the other night, on the floor, with you. She kept folding. Then we should do it more often. He didn't reply, but the next night, he brought a blanket down and laid it out himself. In the following weeks, his team noticed a shift. He declined 3 major speaking engagements. He withdrew from a media feature. He started leaving the office before 7. He said no to another gala. And when an investor questioned his focus, Cairo replied plainly, I'm focused on building something that won't collapse if I miss one meeting. The message was clear. He wasn't building alone anymore. One morning, Amira came downstairs to find him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, making eggs. You don't know how to cook, she said. He didn't look up. No, but I know how to follow instructions. She leaned against the doorway. Whose instructions? He glanced at her, cracked a smile. Yours. She didn't laugh, but her eyes softened. She stepped forward, took over the stove and said, then let me show you slowly. And for the first time in a long time, Cairo didn't rush to finish anything. The shift was quiet. There was no announcement, no press release, no social media post declaring that the once untouchable Cairo Veldon had slowed down. But the people around him noticed. Meetings got shorter. He spoke less, but when he did, it carried more weight. He showed up to fewer events, declined interviews he once chased, and passed on features that would have boosted his brand equity. His boardroom became quieter, more focused. His home became warmer. Still, peace doesn't protect you from disruption. It was a Monday morning. Rain tapped the windows, and the city moved sluggishly below. Cairo had just sat down with a fresh espresso when his phone buzzed. It wasn't a usual alert. It was a headline. Whistleblower alleges Veldon Group mishandled private user data. Federal inquiry rumored. He didn't flinch, but his eyes stayed on the screen longer than usual. Within the hour, his legal team called. Then the PR firm. Then the investors. Then the board. By noon, the story had made national media. An anonymous former employee claimed the company's data protocol violated ethical standards. There was no formal evidence yet, but the media didn't need proof. They needed traffic. Suddenly, Cairo wasn't a tech genius. He was a headline. Again. That night, the apartment was dim when he walked in. Amira had lit 2 small lamps. The dining table had 1 plate of food left covered with a cloth. She looked up from the couch. You're late. He nodded. Something came up. I saw... She didn't ask questions, didn't interrogate, didn't accuse. She waited, and that made his chest tighten. I didn't do anything wrong, he said. She stood and walked to the table, uncovered his food. Eat. I'm not hungry. You need strength, not for them. For you. He sat, quietly. She placed the fork beside him and returned to the couch. He didn't eat much. just enough to stop the spinning in his stomach. When he sat beside her after, she turned to him. "They'll drag me into it," she said softly. "I'll protect you." "You can't," she replied. "You don't control the noise." He looked away. Her voice was calm. "But you control your stillness, and mine. I don't want you in the line of fire." She shook her head. "You married me. That fire's already mine." The next morning, she was already gone before he woke up. She left a note on the counter, breathed through the noise. "Let me know if you need a place to hide." And for a moment, Cairo felt like a man who didn't deserve her. By midday, 2 former partners had made vague statements on LinkedIn. One hinted at ethical disagreements. Another expressed regret for how certain data was handled. The city didn't need evidence. The suggestion was enough. A news station replayed a soundbite from an old interview of Cairo's saying, "Privacy is not just policy, it's our brand." The anchor smiled as if waiting for the irony to land. By afternoon, photos of Amira appeared online. Old ones. Her retreat's website traffic spiked. Comment sections filled with, "She's his handler. She probably knows too much. She was always too quiet. It's suspicious. She didn't call him. She didn't need to." That night, Cairo didn't go home immediately. He drove to the retreat. Didn't call ahead. He just needed to see her. When he pulled into the lot, the lights were still on. He stepped inside and was greeted by quiet music, soft lighting, and the scent of lemongrass. She was there, alone, cleaning up after the last session. She looked up. "I figured you'd come. I didn't know where else to go." She wiped her hands and nodded toward the floor cushions. "Then sit." And he did. Shoes off, jacket folded. He sat. She handed him tea without asking. Sat beside him. They didn't talk for a while, just breathed. "Do you believe me?" he asked finally. Amira turned her head toward him. "You've never lied to me." "That's not what I asked." She nodded slowly. "I believe you." He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "But belief," she continued, "doesn't erase the noise. We'll still feel the heat. And I won't run from it. I never wanted you to be exposed. But I'm not fragile," she said. "And you didn't pick me to be protected. You picked me because I don't flinch." He looked at her hands. Calm, centered. She was right. She had never flinched. That night, they walked out of the retreat together. The air was cool, quiet. No cameras, no flashing lights. Just the street, the night. The two of them. He reached for her hand, held it tight. And for once, not as a show, but as grounding, because everything else was shaking. The morning came with headlines sharper than the day before. Data scandal deepens. Anonymous tip links Veldon exec to privacy breach. Is Cairo Veldon the next fallen tech icon? And where is his mysterious wife amid the storm? Someone had leaked internal documents. Nothing illegal, but out of context, everything looked suspicious. Media outlets spun angles fast. News cycles didn't wait for facts. The story wasn't just about data anymore. It was about him, and through him, Amira. Cairo cancelled every meeting that day. He stayed home, not because he was hiding, but because his silence finally had a purpose. He needed to think. By noon, he sat by the window with his phone on airplane mode, laptop closed. A mug of untouched coffee sat in his hand, as the city moved beneath him, like it wasn't trying to destroy him. Then, the buzzer rang. He walked to the door and opened it to find Amira standing there with 2 grocery bags. "You have food here," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "And yet, you haven't eaten." He stepped aside. "Come in." She moved through the kitchen like it was hers, which it was, even if she didn't claim it. She pulled ingredients out. Eggs, vegetables, rice, broth, ginger. Simple things. Comfort things. "You don't have to take care of me right now," he said quietly. She didn't look at him. "I'm not here to take care of you. I'm here because you're not doing it for yourself." Cairo leaned against the counter. "Your name's everywhere today," he said. "I know. They're dragging you into it." "I expected that." He paused. Are you angry? She stopped stirring. No. I'm disappointed that you thought this would break me. He looked at her then. Really looked. I didn't want you hurt. And yet, she replied softly, you never asked if I was strong enough. They ate in the living room. Cairo didn't finish his plate, but he ate more than the night before. That was progress. She sat cross-legged, bowl in her lap, quiet. Do you want to disappear for a while? He asked. Amira shook her head. No. I want to be seen. By you. Not by them. They think I'm a fraud. And what do you think? She asked. He took too long to answer. So she continued, your silence isn't protection, it's isolation. He set his bowl down. I don't know how to fight this without falling apart, he admitted. Amira looked at him with no pity, no softness, just steadiness. Then fall apart. But not alone. That evening, she stayed. Not as a guest, not as a support system, as his wife. She folded her things into the drawer she'd never used, set her alarm to his calendar, poured tea, and didn't ask how he was. She just stayed. The next day, a media van parked outside their building. By afternoon, 2 reporters had tried following her to the retreat. One shouted a question, do you feel safe with your husband? She didn't answer. She walked inside. But that night, she told him what happened. Cairo stood at the window long after she went to bed. He stared at the lights across the city. He wasn't afraid of them. He was afraid of what would happen to her under their weight. In the days that followed, she kept showing up. She taught her sessions. She brewed her tea. She greeted every client with calm. But the difference was, he showed up too. He sat in the corner of her sessions. He helped clean mats. He refilled water pitchers. He took calls only outside, never interrupting the flow of her work. Someone snapped a photo of him, helping an elderly man into his car outside the retreat. It made the news. Veldon seen at wife's wellness center, attempt at damage control or real change. The caption didn't matter. The look on his face in the photo did. It wasn't curated. It wasn't calculated. It was stillness. Later that week, a reporter stopped her in the grocery store. Do you believe your husband is innocent? She looked directly into the camera. I've never met a man more committed to doing things right, even when no one's watching. Then she pushed her cart and walked away. That clip went viral. When she returned home that night, Cairo stood by the kitchen island with his phone in hand. He turned it toward her. You're trending, she sighed. I said what I meant. He nodded. Why did you defend me? Amira placed the bag on the counter. Because I don't doubt you. I've seen you. His voice was quieter now. I thought you'd leave. She turned to him fully. I thought you'd finally stop pretending I don't know who you are. That was the moment Cairo's chest cracked. Not in pain, but in release. And for the first time in years, Cairo Veldon cried in someone's presence. He didn't apologize for it. She didn't reach to wipe his face. She just stood beside him until he breathed normally again. That night, he slept more peacefully than he had in weeks. Not because the headlines changed, but because someone had seen all of him and stayed. The following week, the noise faded. But not because the world suddenly believed him. It faded because Cairo stopped feeding it. He turned down interviews, declined statements, delegated the legal responses to his team. He didn't chase validation anymore, and when they asked for Amira's presence at a public panel to show a united front, he refused. She's not a shield, he told them. She's my home. He began waking earlier, before the city, before the calls, sometimes before Amira. He'd make coffee, stand on the balcony, and listen to the stillness he used to fear. Then he'd go back inside, pull a blanket over her, and sit quietly while she slept. He didn't check the markets first thing. He didn't open his inbox. He watched her breathe. That became his morning ritual. One afternoon, Amira caught a cold. Nothing major. A headache, a low fever, a tired body. She planned to go to the retreat anyway. He blocked the door. You're staying in? She raised an eyebrow. Since when do you block doorways? Since I started watching how you take care of everyone but yourself. She smiled faintly. The clients need me. They'll survive one day. She didn't argue after that. He made her soup. Ordered it, really, but served it himself. He turned off all the lights except the small lamp beside the couch and dimmed the curtains. He laid her down, tucked her in, then pulled a chair beside her. She looked up at him. You don't have to sit here. I want to. You've cancelled 2 calls already. Then I'm cancelling 3. Amira blinked slowly. Why? Cairo reached for her hand. Because you did it for me. When I came home broken, when I had nothing to give. That's different. No, it isn't. You stayed. You read to me when I couldn't focus. You didn't rush me to be fine. She didn't speak for a while. Then, it was never about waiting for you to be fine. What was it about? Waiting for you to be real. He sat beside her for hours. When she dozed off, he picked up one of her books and read. Not out loud, just enough to feel her presence even while she slept. At one point, her fingers slipped into his palm, half conscious. He didn't let go. That night, she woke up to find him still there. Eyes closed, head tilted back. She whispered, "Go to bed." He cracked one eye open. "Are you done needing me?" She smiled. "Not yet. Then I'll stay." And he did. The next morning, she woke up before him. She watched him sleep, his hand still resting near hers. There was no armor on his face, no sharpness in his posture, no calculation in his jaw, just rest. She traced his wrist with one finger and whispered, "This is what I meant when I said I needed presence." He didn't answer, but something in his breathing shifted, like his body heard her even if his mind hadn't woken up yet. Later that day, her fever broke. He smiled when he noticed. Back to saving the world? She shook her head. Back to sharing it. That evening, as they walked into the retreat together, her assistant paused and said, "He's been different lately." Amira simply replied, "He's been becoming," and Cairo didn't ask what she meant, because for once he already knew. There was a softness between them now, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, like a rhythm they'd quietly fallen into without needing to name it. Cairo didn't question it. He didn't try to define it either. He just lived in it, finally. One morning, he woke up before Amira. She was still curled under the sheets, her hands stretched across the bed, her breathing deep and even. For a long moment, he didn't move. He just watched her sleep. She didn't wear the world on her face like he did. She carried it differently, tucked inside, spread out in moments of silence. She didn't push. She didn't chase. She simply stayed. And it was in that stillness that he realized he had fallen in love with her, fully, without need, without conditions. Later that day, they went for a walk near her retreat. The weather had warmed, and the sidewalks were quieter than usual. She reached for his hand. He gave it. No cameras, no city watching, no words. Just her fingers wrapped around his, and the comfort of knowing he didn't need to prove anything anymore. That night, Amira sat on the couch reading. He walked in from the kitchen and stood in front of her, silent. She looked up. "What?" He didn't speak. He sat down next to her, took the book from her hands, and set it aside gently. Then he took her hands into his. "I need to say something," he said. Amira watched him quietly, giving him space. "I spent most of my life trying to build something no one could take from me," he said. "But I never knew how to build something I didn't want to lose." Her eyes stayed on his. "I didn't know how to be good at this." "I know," she whispered. He nodded. "But I want to try now, for real. Not out of loyalty, not because I owe you, but because I see you, and I want to keep seeing you." She didn't cry. She didn't make a speech. She just leaned in and kissed him. And for the first time in their marriage, it wasn't a gesture of patience. It was one of love. They didn't talk about it again the next day. There was no need. The shift had already happened. He didn't go back to being the man who needed to prove his value through press features or product launches. He became the man who remembered what Amira said from the beginning. Don't give me what money can buy. Give me what no one else gets. Now, she had it. Days passed. Quiet, shared ones. He came home earlier. They made meals together. Sometimes they stayed up late just talking, about nothing, about everything, about childhood memories, about the future, about places they wanted to visit, people they still hadn't become. One night she asked him, "What does peace look like to you now?" He paused, waking up without feeling the need to run. "And what do you run from?" He thought about it for a moment, then answered, "Regret." She nodded. "Then stop running. Be still with it. Let it teach you." He didn't answer, but he kissed her forehead that night like it meant something. Because it did. One afternoon, he got a call from an old business partner who had kept his distance during the scandal. "Cairo, listen, I wanted to say, I should have backed you publicly." Cairo stood in his office, looking out over the skyline. "You didn't owe me that," he replied. "I didn't," the man said, "but I should have anyway." There was a pause. "Also, I saw your wife's interview. She's impressive." Cairo smiled faintly. "I know." And that was the end of that call. That night, he told Amira about it over dinner. She laughed. "You said, 'I know'? What else was there to say?" She reached for his hand across the table. "You're changing," he looked down. "Into what?" "Into who you were always meant to be." He didn't argue. He didn't deflect. He just held her hand. When she fell asleep that night, he stayed up and wrote something. Not for work. Not for a board meeting. Not for the press. He wrote a short letter. One he would never send. One she might never read. But it said everything. "Amira, you didn't ask me to change. You asked me to show up. And I didn't know then that showing up is harder than winning. But it's also the only thing worth learning how to do. I don't need to be admired anymore. I just want to be known. And you know me better than I ever knew myself. I hope I keep earning that. K." He folded the paper and slid it into the back of a book on the shelf beside their bed. Then he turned off the light and slept peacefully. Have you ever had someone love you, not for what you do, but for who you become when you stop running? If you've ever learned the power of simply being present in love, this story is yours. Drop a comment if you've experienced real growth in a quiet relationship. Like this video if you believe peace can change a person more than success ever could. And don't forget to subscribe. We tell stories that don't just entertain. They remind you who you're capable of becoming. Because here on Mr. Charles Stories, we don't chase noise. We tell the truth, soft, slow, and unforgettable. The headlines didn't stop, but they started changing. What used to be scandal turned into speculation. What began as character attacks became cautious curiosity. And then, something different. One morning, a business columnist published a piece titled, "The Stillness Strategy: How Cairo Veldon Disarmed the City Without Saying a Word." They analyzed his silence, his refusal to clap back, his absence from events, his appearances at the wellness center, his wife's grace, his shift from constant visibility to quiet consistency. The article ended with a sentence that stuck. Maybe the most powerful thing you can do in a world full of noise is choose to be still and let someone steady you. Cairo read it in his office, then turned the screen off. He didn't forward it to anyone. He didn't post about it. He just walked downstairs to find Amira. She was seated in the library corner, reading, wrapped in a soft sweater, feet tucked beneath her. "Are you busy?" he asked. She looked up. "Not if you're about to make tea. I was thinking I'd take you out." She raised a brow. "You want to go out, in public?" He nodded. "With you." She closed the book. "Okay." They went to the bookstore where they first took that quiet photo months ago, the one that went viral, the one everyone judged. Except this time, he didn't keep his head down. He didn't rush her while she browsed. He didn't look over his shoulder. He walked beside her, hand in hers, and let the whispers float behind them like nothing more than wind. They bought 2 books. They sat in the corner. She read hers. He watched her read. And that was the entire point. Later that evening, they stopped by a small Thai restaurant on the way home. No private room, no back exit, no reserved booth. Just a small table by the window. A couple at the next table recognized them. One leaned over, smiling nervously. You're Cairo, right? He nodded once. The woman smiled at Amira. I just wanted to say, you're doing something beautiful. Quietly. It matters. Amira looked at her gently. Thank you. They didn't ask for a photo. They didn't ask anything else. They just left a note with their bill that said, keep choosing each other. On the way home, Cairo looked at Amira in the passenger seat. You ever get tired of being talked about? I got tired of letting it mean something. He nodded. I'm almost there. You're allowed to let go faster than I did. He reached for her hand across the console and held it until the light turned green. By the end of the month, the story shifted completely. What was once a scandal had become a study in how not to crumble under pressure. Articles stopped calling Amira a mystery. They started calling her steady. Editorials praised her silence, her presence, her refusal to play the PR game. Bloggers speculated on how she transformed Cairo Veldon, though they never quite got the story right. They called it grace. They called it strength. They called it branding. But what it really was commitment. One evening, as they cleaned up after dinner, Amira said, I've been thinking of adding new rooms to the retreat. Cairo rinsed a bowl. What kind? A grief center, more one-on-one therapy spaces, a quiet garden. He looked at her. Do it. She paused. You're not going to ask for projections. He shook his head. I've learned something from you. Oh, you don't measure impact in numbers. You feel it in people. She smiled at that. Then he added, but if you need help with logistics, I'll show up. Quietly. I'd expect nothing less, she said. A few days later, he brought blueprints home. Not of his next company, but of her retreat. He had quietly hired an architect to study the land. He handed her the designs like they were an offering. Nothing flashy, he said. Just space that breathes. Amira unfolded the plans and traced the outlines. A greenhouse, a private counseling wing, an outdoor meditation walk with soft lights, a library with floor cushions, a space for veterans, a space for children. He watched her eyes move across it all. This is your gift? She asked. No, he said softly. This is your work. I'm just building what you already started. She folded the paper slowly and met his eyes. I never wanted to be saved, she said. He nodded. You weren't. You were seen. That night, they sat on the rooftop of their building, wrapped in a blanket, with mugs of warm tea in hand. Below them, the city moved, less like a threat now, more like background noise. Cairo leaned his head against hers. I used to think silence was punishment, he said. And now it feels like home. She didn't say much in return. She didn't have to. He knew what she meant just by the way her fingers tightened gently around his. That weekend, he took her back to Lake Geneva. No press, no cameras, no agenda, just a short drive, a small inn, the same bench they once sat on in silence. They sat there again. No one recognized them this time. And if they did, no one said anything. She rested her head on his shoulder. He kissed the top of her head. And for once, Cairo didn't think about what came next. He only thought about now. Cairo Veldon used to measure life in milestones, product launches, valuations, expansion phases, deal closings. Now, he measured it in mornings. Amira didn't wake up to headlines, in the steady sound of their breath, sinking during shared silence, in the way her hand sometimes found his without needing a reason. He used to live on stages. Now he was learning how to live in rooms. And the world noticed. A well-respected tech magazine reached out. They didn't want to interview him about business. They wanted to write about the change. We're doing a feature on reinvention, the editor explained. What it looks like when someone at the top decides to slow down and still thrive. Cairo's first instinct was to decline. He didn't want to perform. But when he mentioned it to Amira, she said quietly, maybe the version. A view that's learning to be still deserves to be seen too. He nodded. Only if you're in it with me. She smiled. Only if we don't pretend we got here overnight. The interview took place at their home. No fancy studio, no rehearsed lines. Just a journalist, a notepad, and 2 mugs of tea. The writer asked Cairo, "What changed you?" He looked across at Amira before answering. "Someone loved me enough to sit in silence with me until I wasn't afraid of it anymore." The article went viral, not because of scandal or clickbait, but because people saw something rare. A man once known for his dominance, now known for his presence. A marriage that wasn't glamorized but grounded. Photos of them in their living room. Her barefoot, him laughing. The quiet connection, the comfort. People called it authentic. They called it grown. Some called it boring. But they didn't care. They never wanted to be anyone else's version of impressive again. Amira's retreat began filling up again, not with people chasing a trend, but with people chasing peace. Veterans, teachers, parents, grieving spouses, burned-out professionals, and Cairo. He didn't just drop her off anymore. He stayed. He read books in the waiting area. He offered to help organize events. He even built a small private server to help her clients schedule appointments securely. Not because he needed control, but because he wanted to make something she could lean on. One afternoon, during a group session for caregivers, Amira asked each participant, "What do you need that you've never allowed yourself to ask for?" The circle was quiet. Then someone said, "Rest." Another whispered, "Permission to stop fixing everyone." Another, "To be seen as more than who I care for." Cairo sat in the back, unnoticed until someone pointed to him gently. "And you?" He paused, then to be forgiven for showing up late, but still trying to stay. Amira's eyes locked with his. She didn't say a word, but her silence said everything. After the session, he helped clean up as usual. Stacking chairs, folding mats, wiping down tables. As they stepped into the empty hallway, Amira leaned against the wall and looked at him. "You say you're late," she said. He nodded. "But you didn't miss it," she finished. That hit him deep, not as a compliment, as a truth. He reached for her hand. She laced her fingers with his. That weekend, they spent a full day at home. No calls, no obligations. They cooked together. He tried her ginger-roasted carrots and burned half of them. She laughed, not mockingly but with warmth. They danced to old jazz playing from the speaker in the corner. They lay on the couch for hours without checking the time. At one point he whispered, "This is what I used to think I'd get after retirement." She looked at him. "This is what you almost missed." He kissed her shoulder, gentle. "I'm glad I didn't." That night, as she slept beside him, Cairo opened his journal. A habit Amira had encouraged. Nothing structured, just a place to put the things that didn't make sense in his head yet. He wrote, "I didn't need rescue. I needed rest, and I found it in a woman who never tried to fix me, only invited me to sit still long enough to see myself. The city didn't change me. The noise didn't break me. The silence saved me. And she met me there." The next morning, as they walked through the city hand in hand, no one pointed. No cameras. Just 2 people moving through a world they no longer needed to impress. For once, the city didn't mock their marriage. It watched it, quietly, and maybe envied the peace it couldn't disrupt. They didn't need anniversaries to remind them of where they were. But when their 3rd year of marriage came quietly, no parties, no posts, no press, Cairo looked at Amira across the breakfast table and said, "Let's write new vows." She blinked. "New?" "The old ones weren't lies," he said, "but they were made by 2 people still wearing armor." She leaned forward. "And now we're just wearing skin." They didn't hire a planner. They didn't send invitations. They didn't book a venue. They drove out to the land behind her retreat. A quiet piece of earth, lined with trees. A small deck was built there months ago for meditation groups. That would be their altar. She wore a white cotton dress. No makeup, no jewelry, just her and the wind. He wore a cream shirt, sleeves rolled, no tie, barefoot like her. The officiant was an old woman who'd once been Amira's therapist. Her only request, no performance, only truth. There were no chairs, just standing guests, close friends, two of her staff members, one of his board members who had become family, her parents, his mother. No press, no noise, only stillness. Amira went first. Her voice was steady. I never wanted to change you. I only wanted to meet the part of you that the world kept skipping past. And now, I live with him. You're not perfect. You're not always present, but you choose me in ways that matter, and that's all I ever asked. So, I'll keep choosing you, softly, daily, and without condition. Cairo's throat tightened. He took a breath and spoke. I once thought love was the thing that distracted men like me, but I was wrong. It's what brought me home. And you gave me a life that doesn't need an audience to feel real. I vow to never treat your peace like it's quiet. I know now that your stillness saved me, and I'll spend the rest of our life showing up for you the way you always did for me, even when I didn't know it. There were no tears, only warmth, and when they kissed, it didn't feel like a declaration. It felt like a pause between one heartbeat and the next. They didn't have a reception. They had a picnic. No music, just blankets, bread, fruits, sparkling water, laughter, sunlight. Someone played a quiet acoustic guitar in the background. At one point, Amira leaned her head on Cairo's shoulder. You know they still whisper about us, she said. He smirked. Let them. We're still writing. That night, they walked barefoot across the garden and back to their car. As they reached the gate, she stopped. What? He asked. I want one picture. They turned to one of the staffers holding a phone. No posing, no fake angles. He stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist. She leaned into him. The picture caught them just before they both smiled. It would later be printed and framed, not on the retreat's wall, not in his office, but beside their bed, where only they would see it. Every morning, every night, back in the city, life continued, but it no longer dictated their rhythm. Cairo took fewer meetings. He launched no new ventures for the rest of that year. He put more energy into mentoring, young founders, women-led startups, community work, not to be seen, but because it finally made sense to serve something bigger than his own name. Amira expanded the retreat with his support. Quietly, without brand deals or media attention, the new grief center opened in spring. The outdoor meditation garden welcomed its first evening group under lantern light. Children ran through the therapy wing. Veterans sat in silence beneath trees, and in one small corner, a wooden plaque hung on the wall. Stillness is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of peace. She never said who wrote it, but she looked at him when it was unveiled, and he smiled, because he knew, one night, as they stood on the balcony of their home, looking out over the city, Amira said, You think the world stopped judging us? No, he replied, but we stopped waiting for their applause. She nodded. Do you miss it? The noise? Sometimes, he admitted, but only for a second. Then I remember your voice, and it's louder than anything they ever said. She leaned into him, and the city, once so loud, seemed impossibly quiet beneath them. Fall brought a slow hush to the retreat grounds. The leaves began turning soft amber and red, and the garden grew quiet with every passing breeze. Amira adjusted her schedule to accommodate the change in light. Fewer group sessions in the evenings, more morning meditations, less noise overall. The quiet was sharper in the fall, and somehow more honest. Cairo started spending more time on site, not because he was trying to help, but because it had become the only place that didn't ask him to be more than himself. He helped set up chairs, ordered new cushions, donated materials without attaching his name. He worked in silence and left without being noticed. But everyone noticed. One Thursday, a young woman lingered after a grief circle. She was maybe 22, eyes hollow, hands clenched. Amira stepped forward, but Cairo was already kneeling beside her, speaking softly, not about healing or hope, but about breathing. Just breathing, He didn't try to fix her pain. He didn't offer answers. He offered presence. After she left, Amira stood beside him, wiping down the tea table. "You never said what it was," she murmured. He didn't look up. What was? That moment, your heart shifted. He paused, cloth still in hand. "It was the night I found you asleep on the couch," he said. "After the press tried to break me, you didn't say anything. You just touched my face. And I didn't feel like a headline for the first time in years." Back home that evening, they cooked together. Cairo diced ginger. Amira prepped the rice. Their rhythm didn't need instruction anymore. Midway through, she glanced at him. "Do you think you would have made it through the storm without me?" He didn't answer right away. "Then I would have survived, but I wouldn't have healed. And now?" He looked at her hands, steady over the stovetop. "Now, I don't just feel better, I feel different." Later that night, he stood by the bedroom window as the city lights blinked below. He wasn't watching the skyline. He was listening to the faint hum of life, the way silence now held more truth than applause ever did. Amira walked in, drying her hands with a small towel. He turned. "You know what I regret?" he asked. She folded the towel slowly. "What?" "That I didn't see you sooner. You saw me the first day. I saw your outline. But I didn't look into you. Not until the world pushed me to the edge." She stepped closer. "You had to get to the edge to understand the view." That weekend, they visited her parents. It had been a while. Life had steadied, but time had moved fast. Her mother prepared the same lentil stew Amira grew up eating. Her father brought out old photo albums with soft pages and faded corners. Cairo sat between them on the couch, smiling gently at the way Amira cringed at childhood pictures. "That one," her father said, pointing, "was taken the week she told us she wanted to leave medicine." Amira laughed. "I remember." You both went silent for a full minute. Her mother shook her head. "We didn't understand it then. But now," she looked at Cairo. "Now, it makes sense." After dinner, Amira's father pulled Cairo aside. "You know," he said, "you never asked for my blessing." "Not really." Cairo nodded. "I didn't think I needed it. I was wrong." The older man studied him. "You found your way to her anyway. I almost didn't." "But you did," he said. "And you stayed." "I didn't know how to leave." "Not leaving is different from staying," the father said. Cairo took that in, then quietly answered, "I stay now." Fully, driving back into the city, Amira leaned against the window. "It felt different today," she murmured. "What did you there with them?" He glanced over. "Because I wasn't performing?" She smiled. "Because you weren't protecting yourself." He reached over, fingers brushing her wrist. "I'm learning that presence is safer than distance." She nodded, eyes still on the window. "That's something most people never learn." Later that night, they stood in their kitchen, barefoot, lights low, the hum of the city muffled by the windows. Amira leaned against the counter, arms folded. "You've changed." Cairo stepped forward. "Into who?" She didn't answer right away. "Then, into the version of you that doesn't need applause to breathe." He smiled faintly. "You miss the old me?" "Sometimes," she teased. He looked good in suits. Cairo laughed. "He's still in there, just quieter now." And in that quiet, in that soft space between old wounds and new choices, they found something unshakable. A connection not forged by drama or survival, but by returning, again and again, to each other, until even the city couldn't deny the truth. They didn't prove the world wrong. They simply lived long enough for the noise to fade. A month after their vow renewal, the retreat held its largest community event. Yet, a quiet mental wellness fair focused on healing through simplicity. No sponsors, no stage, just people. Cairo stood at the far edge of the garden, watching as Amira moved between tables. She greeted vendors with ease, offered guests warm tea, adjusted cushions under shade, trees, and answered every question with the same calm she'd shown him since day one. She wasn't hosting the event, she was holding it. And Cairo wasn't the center of anything. He didn't want to be. He was just a man beside the woman who made everything around her feel less loud. A young man approached him by the water station. "You're Cairo Veldon, right?" Cairo nodded. The man hesitated, then said, "You spoke at my college 4 years ago. You said, 'Build things no one can take from you.'" Cairo remembered. He used to say that in nearly every keynote. The man smiled. "That quote pushed me through graduation, but now, seeing you here, I think you're building something different." Cairo tilted his head. "Like what?" The man looked over at a mirror. "Something no one wants to take. Something quiet that still stands." Cairo didn't respond. He just held that truth in his chest for the rest of the afternoon. Later that evening, when the event had ended and guests began filtering out, Amira sat under a tree with her shoes off, sipping cold water. Cairo joined her, sitting on the grass beside her knees. "You looked at home today," he said. "I was. I used to think I was supposed to build everything for you," he admitted. "But I think I just needed to build something with you." Amira took his hand. "That's the difference between partnership and performance," she said. "You're not here to impress me." He nodded. "I'm here to live beside you." The following week, they received a formal invite from a global wellness conference. They wanted Amira to speak on emotional resilience. Cairo read the invite before she did. "You should go," he told her. She raised an eyebrow. "You're not worried I'll steal your spotlight?" He laughed. "You are my spotlight." Amira grinned. "You're getting soft." "I've been soft. You just never looked close enough." They flew to the event together. It was held in Colorado, high in the mountains, where silence came naturally and the air forced you to slow down. Amira's session was scheduled for the second day. She asked Cairo not to sit in the front row. "Why?" he asked. "Because I don't want to anchor my voice to your presence," she said gently. "I need to stand in this one on my own." He respected that. Sat in the third row, off-center. Watched as she took the stage in soft grey, no notes in hand, no slides behind her, just her voice, and the story of choosing stillness in a world obsessed with speed. She told the audience about her retreat, about burnout, about how she once thought she had to become louder to be seen. Then she spoke about love, not in grand metaphors, but in simple truths. "I married a man the city mocked me for. They said I didn't fit his world. And for a while, I believed that. But love isn't about matching someone's world. It's about being strong enough to let them come home to yours." People didn't clap when she finished. They stood, quietly. And that was the best kind of applause. Back in their hotel room, Cairo sat across from her on the floor. He reached for her foot and pulled it into his lap, massaging it gently. "I think the whole world's in love with you now," he said. Amira smiled. "You should have seen their faces." "I saw yours," he said. "It's the only one I needed to." She leaned back on her hands. "Do you feel jealous?" "No," he said. "I feel proud and selfish, because no one else gets this version of you." She nudged his thigh with her other foot. "And you? Do you feel seen now?" He paused. "For the first time, I feel witnessed. Like someone finally saw beyond the empire and into the man still learning how to rest." They flew home 2 days later. At the airport, someone approached them again. This time, it was a woman in her 60s. "You're the one who built that software company," she said to Cairo. "My grandson uses it." He nodded politely. Then she looked at Amira. "And you're the one who teaches people how to stop running." Amira blinked. "I suppose I am." The woman smiled. "You both do good work." Then she walked away. Cairo turned to Amira. She wasn't wrong. That night, they got home to a quiet apartment, their bags barely unpacked, their shoes still near the door. They sat on the floor of their living room, takeout containers between them. No conversation, just presence. And then Amira whispered, "We built something they can't define." Cairo looked at her. "We built a life," he said. "And we didn't have to explain it." She rested her head on his shoulder. Outside the window, the city kept spinning. But inside, time had already slowed. 3 years had passed since the wedding they never broadcasted, and still, the city had opinions. Some believed the marriage was a fluke, others called it strategy. Some quietly admitted it changed the way they viewed connection. But for Cairo and Amira, time had done what the city never could. It softened everything. No more proving, no more defense, no more waiting for peace to be interrupted. They lived now. Fully, quietly, together. A journalist reached out for an anniversary piece, a flattering one this time, a profile about redefining legacy through love. Cairo declined, not because he didn't appreciate it, but because they had nothing left to perform. They planned a quiet evening to mark the date. No dinner reservations, no flash, just the two of them returning to where it started, the lake. They arrived late Friday afternoon, checked into the same small inn, and didn't unpack. Amira kicked off her shoes immediately. Cairo dropped his bag and opened the window. Fresh air poured in. She stepped behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist and whispered, "You remember what you said the first time we came here?" "I said a lot of dumb things back then." She laughed. "You said I was your piece." He turned. "That wasn't dumb." "No," she said. "It wasn't." They walked down to the lake in the evening, barefoot again. The bench was still there, weathered now, but familiar. They sat in silence for a while, until Cairo said, "Do you ever think about how easily this could have gone wrong?" Amira didn't look at him. "I think everything meaningful has 100 chances to fail, and 1 chance to survive. And we survived." "No," she said softly. "We lived." Back in the room, Cairo lit the small lamp near the window. He turned to her slowly. "There's something I've never said," he murmured. Amira raised an eyebrow. "Now I'm listening." He walked to the drawer in the nightstand and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed a bit, worn at the creases. He handed it to her. "What is this?" He didn't answer, just waited. She opened it. "Read slowly." It was the letter he'd written that night months ago when she was asleep beside him. "I didn't need rescue. I needed rest. And I found it in a woman who never tried to fix me, only invited me to sit still long enough to see myself. The city didn't change me. The noise didn't break me. The silence saved me, and she met me there." Her eyes didn't water. They didn't need to. She folded it, placed it on the nightstand, and stepped closer. "You wrote that and never gave it to me? I didn't know if I deserved to, and now I know better." She touched his face. "You've always deserved to be known." They didn't speak after that. They lay on the bed, face to face, sharing slow breath in the dark. The lamp stayed on. So did the feeling. The next morning, they woke without alarms. Amira stretched, hair messy, eyes half closed. Cairo looked at her for a long time. "What?" she asked. "I love you," he said simply. She smiled. "That's not new." "No," he said. "But the way I mean it is." After breakfast, they went for a walk. No destination, no phones. Just steps beside steps, stories exchanged in silence. At one point, she asked, "What do you want the next 5 years to feel like?" He thought carefully, then answered, "Like now." "But deeper." She nodded. "I'll take that." They stopped by a small, quiet bookstore on the edge of the lake. Inside, it smelled like wood and pages and cinnamon tea. They browsed slowly, fingers trailing along titles, not looking for anything. Cairo picked up a book of poetry and flipped through it. He paused on a page and handed it to Amira. She read, "Let them say whatever they want. We loved softly, and it was enough." She looked at him. "I want this framed," she whispered. "Already bought it," he said, holding another copy in his other hand. That night, they drove back to the city in silence. But this silence wasn't distance. It was the sound of something whole, of two people who met in an arrangement and built a life that was never meant to be defined by anyone else's language. As they crossed the city line, Cairo reached over and turned off the radio. Amira looked over, surprised. "No more music?" she teased. "No," he said, taking her hand. "This silence is full." Full deepened. The air in the city cooled. The retreat garden turned amber, the trees letting go of their leaves, the way Amira had taught Cairo to let go of control, gently, without fear. The retreat was full almost every week now, not from exposure, not from marketing, but from whispers, from lives touched, from people who felt something they couldn't quite explain until they stepped into the quiet Amira had cultivated. Cairo still helped sometimes, but he was no longer a visitor in her world. He belonged in it, fully. One evening, after the last session, Amira sat on the steps of the deck, barefoot, teacup balanced on her knee. Cairo sat beside her, a blanket around both their shoulders. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous," he replied, smirking. She nudged him. "Seriously?" He turned. "What about?" She hesitated, then said, "About what legacy really means." Cairo didn't interrupt. He listened. "I used to think it was about how many people you help or how many remember your name. Now I think, maybe it's about who you become with the people you love, the version of you that survives time and failure and change." He nodded slowly. Then, "You're my legacy." She looked at him and whispered, "You're mine too." They spent that weekend doing nothing special. They stayed home, cooked, read books, took long showers, shared long silences. One afternoon, Amira came into the living room with an old journal in her hand. She opened it to a marked page and handed it to him. It was an entry from their first month of marriage. "I don't know if he'll ever see me," she had written, "but I'll stay long enough for him to remember how to look." Cairo didn't say anything. He stood, walked over, and kissed the side of her head. "I've never looked away since." They made love that night slowly. No urgency, no hunger, just presence, just gratitude. Two people who had once been strangers in a quiet room, now fully wrapped in the kind of intimacy that couldn't be staged. He held her long after. She fell asleep with her back pressed to his chest, his fingers tracing, her collarbone like it was the first and last thing that mattered. In the weeks that followed, the city buzzed with its usual noise. Tech acquisitions, political stories, viral trends, but none of it reached them. Not really, because they had built something that didn't need a spotlight. One crisp November morning, Cairo opened his inbox to find a letter from an old rival. It read, "You disappeared for a while. The old you would have never stepped back, but this new version, I can't argue with the results. Whatever you found, hold on to it. You're the only one I know who didn't lose himself in the empire." Cairo closed the message, didn't respond, but he sat there a little longer, watching the retreat's cameras from his phone. Amira was walking through the garden, placing folded blankets on chairs. There was a smile on her face, small, true. Later that day, he showed up without warning. She looked up as he entered. "You didn't tell me you were coming. I wanted to see you without scheduling it." She tilted her head. "Everything okay?" He walked closer. "Yeah," he said. "More than okay." They sat on the bench behind the garden, the one he'd helped build last year, the one no one else used. It faced the trees, faced nothing, faced peace. Amira leaned into his shoulder. Cairo looked forward and breathed. They didn't need to say it, but they knew it. They had outlived the mockery, outlived the noise, outlived the assumptions, not by being louder, not by proving anything, but by living a love so full it didn't need explaining. If you stayed through this story, you already know. This wasn't about success. This was about presence, about love that grows quietly, beneath headlines, past judgment, beyond noise. If this story touched something in you, like the video, drop a comment. Have you ever found peace where the world expected chaos? And subscribe. Join us here at Mr. Charles Stories, where we believe the softest love often writes the loudest legacy.